I used to work at a small-town grocery store in Manitoba. Not a big chain, just one of those local stores where everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where the floors creak and the lights flicker every time you turn them on. My job was simple: night shift stocker. I'd start around 10 p.m., unload boxes, restock shelves, clean up aisles, and organize the back room. I was usually alone from midnight to 6 a.m. after the manager left. There were cameras, sure, but nothing fancy. Just grainy black and white footage monitored from a tiny office. I didn't mind the quiet. No customers, no stress. Just me, my headphones, and the hum of the freezer in the background. That changed. The night I started hearing the voices, it began small. A whisper here, a breath there. I brushed it off, thinking it was the building settling or maybe the air vents making weird noises. Old buildings do that. But it didn't stop, and it all seemed to come from the same place. The walk-in freezer. Now, let me tell you something about that freezer. It was old, like 1980s old, and it was colder than it should have been. Sometimes I'd feel a chill even from across the room. No matter how much insulation we added, it never felt right. You'd open the heavy steel door and immediately feel like you stepped into something unnatural. One night, around 2:15 a.m., I was stacking milk crates near the back when I heard someone say my name, clear as day. Ethan. It was a whisper, but close. Way too close. I turned fast. No one. I took off my headphones. Total silence. I stood still, holding my breath. Then I heard it again. Ethan. This time, it came from inside the freezer. I backed up slowly. My skin went cold, even colder than the air around me. I stared at that metal door, thinking, someone's messing with me. But I was the only one there. I checked the cameras in the office. Nothing. I told myself maybe I imagined it. Lack of sleep. Audio playing through my headphones. I didn't notice. I went home that morning and tried to forget. But the next night, it got worse. Around the same time, 2:15, I heard banging from the freezer. 3 loud, sharp bangs. Bang, bang, bang. I ran to the back room. The door was rattling, like someone was locked inside, pounding to get out. I grabbed the handle, heart pounding. "Hello?" I yelled. "Is someone in there?" No answer, just one more slow, soft bang. I pulled open the door and the sound stopped. The room was empty. The frost-coated walls reflected my flashlight beam, and my breath formed thick clouds in the freezing air. No one, but there on the inside of the door was a single smeared handprint, too large to be mine, and fresh, like someone had just been leaning on it. I slammed the door shut and called my manager. She told me it was probably the metal shifting due to the cold, and that you'll get used to the sounds. But I knew what I heard. What I saw, that wasn't metal. That was something else. A few nights later, I brought a thermos of hot coffee and stayed extra alert. No music, no distractions. Just me and the silence. At exactly 2:15 a.m., it happened. Again. But this time, it wasn't my name. It was crying. Faint, echoing from the freezer. Like a woman sobbing quietly, trying not to be heard. It started soft, but it got louder. I stood frozen in place, listening. My body wouldn't move. Then the crying stopped suddenly, and a voice whispered, "Help me." I dropped the box I was holding. When I opened the freezer door, I didn't see anyone, but the temperature had dropped. Way colder than usual. I could feel it in my bones. My teeth chattered. And then I saw something that made me step back in horror. There was frost on the floor, but in the frost, clear as day, were footprints. Bare feet. They led from the back of the freezer to the wall. Not to the door. To the wall. Like someone had walked into it. I reached out and touched the back wall with my hand. It felt like any other freezer wall cold, hard metal, but something inside me felt wrong just being near it. I backed out slowly and closed the door. That morning, I told the manager everything. I even showed her the security footage, but when we played it back, the microphones caught nothing. No crying, no voice dot, and the camera pointed at the freezer glitched out. Right at 2:15 a.m., just static. She didn't say I was lying, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Told me I was probably stressed and should take a day off, but I didn't want a day off. I wanted answers. So I asked the oldest employee in the store, Janice, the bakery lady. She'd been there 20 years. When I brought up the freezer, she went quiet. Then she told me something I still think about every night. Back in 2002, she said, a girl named Lydia worked the night shift. Sweet girl. Quiet. Always cold. She used to say the freezer made her feel like someone was watching her. One night, she disappeared. No break, no clock out, gone. They searched the store, checked the cameras. Nothing. They assumed she ran away, but Janice said something was off. They never replaced the freezer, she said. Just scrubbed it and sealed the floor cracks. When I asked what she meant by floor cracks, she just said, they found blood under the grates, like someone had fallen or... She didn't finish. I decided I needed to know for sure. That night, I brought a small Bluetooth speaker and placed it inside the freezer, turned on my phone's voice recorder and closed the door. Then, I waited. I stayed near the back room, watching the time. 2:15 came. At first, nothing. Then soft static from the speaker and a voice. Not a whisper this time. A clear, desperate voice. Don't leave me in the dark. I yanked the door open. The speaker was frozen over. The air was so cold it burned my lungs. But the worst part? The speaker kept playing the voice, even after I pulled it out. Even after. I turned it off. The voice kept begging. I'm still here. I threw the speaker in the trash. And I quit the next morning. They offered me more money to stay. Promised to fix the issue. I didn't care. I wasn't stepping foot in that building ever again. To this day, I refuse to go into any walk-in freezer. Even at restaurants. And sometimes, late at night, when everything's quiet. I swear I still hear her voice. From inside my own fridge. I used to work as a city bus driver in British Columbia. Mostly quiet routes, mostly night shifts. That suited me fine. I'm not a people person, and driving at night was peaceful. You'd be surprised how calming it is to cruise along empty roads with soft rain on the windshield and nothing but the low hum of the engine. At least, that's what I used to think, until I picked up a passenger who was never supposed to be there. This happened 2 years ago, in late October. I was driving Route 113, a long winding path through the outskirts of town, starting at the depot and ending near a small forested suburb. Not many riders at that hour. Usually 1 or 2 night shift workers or the occasional college kid heading home late. That night was different from the start. It was foggy, thick, heavy mist rolling in off the hills. The kind that makes your headlights almost useless. I'd been driving for about an hour when I noticed the road signs were harder to read, and the trees lining the road looked off. Too still, too tall, but I kept going. I had a schedule to keep. I was about 5 minutes from the last stop, Whistler Pines Terminal, when I saw someone standing at the side of the road, near an old stop that hadn't been in use for years. It used to serve a now abandoned neighborhood called Hillvale, which had been wiped out by a landslide back in the 90s. Nobody lived there anymore. The stop had no lights, no shelter, just a broken sign and a rusted bench. But someone was waiting there. At first, I figured it was a mistake. Maybe someone lost or drunk. I slowed down and pulled up beside the stop. The person didn't move. They were facing away from the road, dressed in dark, old-fashioned clothes. like something out of the 1960s. A long coat, old leather shoes. They didn't turn around when the doors opened. "Last bus," I called out. No response. I felt uneasy, but I'd been trained not to leave. Someone behind if they were clearly trying to get on. I tapped the horn lightly. That's when they turned around. It was a woman. Her face was pale. Not just pale gray. Her eyes looked sunken and distant, like she hadn't slept in weeks. She stepped onto the bus without saying a word, paid in coins that looked oddly old, and walked all the way to the back. I watched her in the mirror. She just sat there, staring out the foggy window like she was watching something far away. I continued driving, but something about her made my skin crawl. I kept looking at her in the mirror. Never once did she blink. I finished the loop, reaching the end of the line. All passengers are supposed to get off at that point so the driver can rest before the return trip. I parked at Whistler Pines and stood up. "End of the line?" I called. She didn't move. "Ma'am?" I tried again. Nothing. I walked down the aisle toward her. My heart was racing. The bus was quiet, too quiet. When I reached her seat, she was gone. Completely gone. No sound. No door opening. Just vanished. But the weirdest part, there was moisture on the window where she'd been sitting. A clear outline of her hand pressed to the glass. I stood there frozen, trying to make sense of it. Then I heard something behind me. The sound of breathing. Turned quickly. The bus was empty. Still, I felt something. Like I wasn't alone. I checked. Outside. No sign of her anywhere. Shaken, I returned to the depot and reported the incident. My supervisor laughed it off and said I must have dozed off. "Long hours can mess with your head," he said, but I knew what I saw. I didn't tell anyone else. What could I say? A ghost got on my bus and disappeared? I tried to forget. Thought maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. But then, 2 nights later, I saw her again. Same stop, same clothes, same pale face. This time I didn't open the door. She didn't move. Just stood there, staring at me as I passed by. I checked the rear camera later. She was gone again. This kept happening. Not every night, but often enough. Sometimes she was at the stop. Sometimes she was already on the bus when I started my shift. Always silent, always watching. I stopped sleeping properly. I kept seeing her face in my dreams, gray skin, hollow eyes, whispering something I couldn't understand. One night, I finally snapped. I pulled over the bus halfway through the route, turned around and yelled, "What do you want from me?" There was no one there, but I heard a whisper, not with my ears. In my head, it said, "Take me home." I couldn't shake it. I began researching the old Hillvale neighborhood. Found a few articles from the archives. A landslide had buried part of the community in 1994. A dozen homes destroyed. 4 people died. One of them was a young woman named Elaine Hargrove, 27 years old. Last seen leaving her workplace, never made it home. Her body was never recovered. I found a photo in the paper. It was her. The woman from the bus. My blood ran cold. After that, I avoided Route 113 for a while. Took time off. But when I returned, they assigned me to the route again. I begged them to reassign me, but we were short-staffed. They didn't believe my story. So I did something I thought might help. I stopped at the Hillvale stop. Late one foggy night, I opened the doors. She stepped on, silently. No coins this time. No hesitation. I said, "Where's home?" No answer, but I started driving anyway. I took the road past the regular route, deeper into the trees, toward where Hillvale used to be. The road was cracked and broken, overgrown, not meant for buses anymore. Still, I drove. And then, as I reached the old gravel path that led into what remained of Hillvale, she stood up. She walked slowly toward the front, her eyes locked on me for the first time. And then she whispered, Thank you." She stepped off the bus dot and vanished into the mist. I never saw her again, but I still drive that route. Sometimes I stop at the old Hillvale stop and open the door just in case. I don't know if she found peace or if I helped her move on, but every now and then when I look in the rearview mirror, I still expect to see her sitting in the back row watching waiting. I used to work the night shift at a small roadside motel just outside of Saskatoon. It was one of those run-down, half-empty places with flickering signs, strange smells, and carpets that had seen better decades. I took the job because I needed money and didn't mind the night hours. It was mostly quietsome travelers, a few long-haul truckers, and sometimes people who clearly didn't want to be seen. But what happened in room 6 is something I'll never forget. I started the job in late spring. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and my tasks were basic: check in guests, answer the phones, do rounds every hour, and keep the front desk manned. The security cameras were old and grainy, but they covered the front lot, the lobby, and the long hallway that led to the rooms. The motel had 12 rooms in total, all lined up in a single row. Room 6 was smack in the middle from the first week. I noticed something strange about that room. It was never rented out. Whenever someone asked for a room, the owner, Mr. Clark, would always skip room 6. I remember seeing it blocked off in the booking, system marked out of order with no explanation. One night I asked him about it. He looked up from his paper, gave me a blank stare, and said, "Plumbing issue." But I never once saw a plumber. I grew curious. On my third week, during one of my night rounds around 2 a.m., I decided to walk past room 6. I had the master key and figured a quick peek wouldn't hurt. The hallway was quiet and cold. I remember the humming of the ice machine and the buzzing light overhead that always flickered. I stopped in front of the door. Room 6 looked like every other room brown door. Faded number, dented handle, but the air felt different. Heavy. I hesitated. Then I unlocked it. The door creaked as it opened. Inside, everything looked normal. Bed made, lights off, curtains drawn. But it smelled wrong. Like mildew and something else, something faintly metallic. Like rust or old blood. I stepped in slowly. The air was thick, stale. Like it hadn't been touched in years. I reached for the light switch. It didn't work. I used my phone's flashlight, scanning the room. Nothing seemed out of place until I saw the mirror above the dresser. It was cracked right down the middle, and in the center of the crack, there was a dark, greasy handprint. But it was on the inside of the glass. I got chills and backed out immediately, locking the door behind me. When I told Mr. Clark the next day, he got quiet. He didn't yell, didn't scold, just said, "Don't go in there again." Then he changed the locks on room 6. I dropped it for a while. Until the night everything went to hell. It was mid-June. A thunderstorm was rolling in. I was alone at the front desk, sipping cheap coffee, watching the rain slam against the front windows. The motel was almost empty, just 3 rooms booked. At 1:44 a.m., the phone rang. I picked up. "Front desk, how can I help you?" Static. Then a voice, faint, raspy. "Room 6. I froze. "Hello? Who is this?" More static. Then a whisper. "You opened it." Click. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the receiver. I checked the receiver. Cameras. The hallway was empty. No movement outside. But then the camera feed glitched just for a second. When it came back on, the hallway monitor showed something new. Room 6's door was open. I didn't believe it. I ran down the hall to check, and sure enough, the door was wide open. No sign of a break-in. No guests had a key. I stood in front of the room, trying to make sense of it. Then I heard the noise. from inside. Whispering low, like it was coming from the walls. I stepped back. Then, suddenly, the bathroom light flicked on inside the room. I didn't wait. I slammed the door and ran back to the front desk. I locked the lobby and called Mr. Clark. He answered, half asleep. "I told you not to mess with room 6, he said. "It opened by itself," I yelled. "There's someone in there." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. "There's no one in there, not anymore." Before I could ask what he meant, he hung up. I spent the rest of the night locked in the office, watching the hallway camera. Around 3:12 a.m., the camera glitched again, and when it cleared, there was someone standing outside room 6. Not walking. Not moving, just standing. He, or it, was tall. Too tall. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. The image was grainy, but I could make out one detail. It had no face. Just smooth, pale skin where the eyes and mouth should be. It stood there for nearly 10 minutes, completely still. Then, without warning, the screen went black. All the cameras failed at once. The lights in the office flickered. I felt the air turn cold, like ice against my skin. Then I heard it. 3 loud knocks. Not at the front door. Not at the window, from the office closet. There was nothing in there but cleaning supplies and an old safe. I backed away slowly, staring. At the door. Another knock. And then a whisper from behind the door, "Let me out." I didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there in silence until sunrise. When Mr. Clark came in, I quit on the spot. I didn't explain, didn't ask questions. I just left. Weeks later, I got curious. I did some digging at the local library. Turns out, room 6 used to be the living quarters for the motel's original owner. Back when the place first opened in the 70s, his name was Tom Whitaker. One night, after years of financial trouble and rumored mental illness, he locked himself in that room and never came out. They found him days later. The mirror had been shattered. Writing was smeared across the walls in what the paper described as dark, unidentified fluids. Witnesses said his body looked like it had been clawed from the inside. They closed room 6 after that. Until Mr. Clark reopened the motel and left that room sealed. Until I opened it. Now, sometimes I'll dream of that hallway, of that door. Sometimes I wake up and swear I hear knocking at my closet. Haven't stayed in a motel since. And if you ever pass through Saskatoon and see a cheap place called Sonny's Motel, drive right past it. And whatever you do, never open room 6. I never believed in ghosts or anything paranormal. Honestly, I thought all that stuff was just stories people told to make life more interesting. But that changed last year during my night shift at a small roadside diner in northern Alberta. It was a quiet place. Sonny's Diner, though it was anything but sunny after dark. We stayed open 24/7, mostly for truckers passing through or locals working late hours. I worked the graveyard shift alone from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The only company I had was the cook, Jerry, who left at midnight after cleaning up the kitchen. After that, it was just me, a few humming lights, and an old radio that barely worked. It was boring most nights, but I liked the peace. That is, until that night. It was a Monday, cold and still outside. No snow yet, but you could feel it coming. The kind of night where even the air feels quiet. We hadn't had any customers in over an hour. Jerry was cleaning up in the back and about to clock out. I sat at the counter, drinking coffee and watching the rain streak down the windows. At 11:47 p.m., the bell above the door dinged. I looked up, expecting a late-night regular or maybe a trucker. But no one came in. The door didn't even move. I frowned and checked the security cam behind the counter. It was an old grainy screen, black and white. It had a small delay, but it worked fine. That's when I saw him. There was a man standing outside the diner. Tall, completely still, just standing by the large window facing the booths. He wasn't moving, not even a little. I squinted at the screen. His face was hard to make out, but it looked like he was staring directly inside. I walked over to the window slowly, unsure what to expect, but when I got there, he was gone. I stepped outside, looked around. Nothing. No cars. No footsteps in the wet gravel. Just the sound of the rain and a soft wind. I went back inside, a little creeped out but trying not to overthink it. Maybe I'd seen a reflection or something on the camera. Jerry left a few minutes later, and I was on my own. Around 12:30 a.m., I started hearing tapping sounds. Light, rhythmic, like fingernails on glass. I paused the music and listened. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the window again. I walked over, heart beating faster now. Still nothing outside, but as I leaned in to look closer, there it was, a handprint, fresh, pressed against the glass. No fog, no rainwater, just one clear handprint. Too big to be mine. I froze. I hadn't heard the door open. The security bell never rang, and the cameras hadn't shown anyone entering the lot. But somehow someone had gotten close enough to press their Jira hand to the glass. I locked the front door, checked the back, and turned on all the lights in the dining area. I even grabbed the old baseball bat we kept under the counter, just in case. That's when things started getting weirder. The booths at the far end of the diner near the window began to feel wrong, like they were colder than the rest of the room. The bulbs above those seats flickered, even though we'd replaced them recently. Then, the radio crackled. I hadn't touched it in over an hour. But suddenly, it turned itself on, full volume, screeching static. I jumped and ran to turn it off. But when I got to it, it switched off on its own right as I reached out. I stared at it, my hand still hovering over the dial. And in that silence, I heard breathing right behind me. Slow, heavy. I turned fast. No one. The diner was completely empty. But then something caught my eye. The camera monitor on the counter flickering again. I looked closely. There he was. The man, back outside. This time closer to the door. His head was tilted slightly, and I swear to you, he was smiling. I stared at the monitor, then rushed to the window again. Nothing. I turned back, and now the camera feed was just static. Like it had been cut. The power didn't go out. The lights were still on. Only the cameras had failed. My hands were shaking. I tried calling the owner. No answer. Tried calling the police, but the phone gave me that long beep like it wasn't connected to a line. Then the radio came on again. But this time, it wasn't static. It was a voice, low, whispering. I couldn't understand most of it, but I caught one word over and over again. Closer, closer, closer. I turned it off, yanked the plug from the wall, and right then, I heard the sound that broke me. The ding of the entrance bell, the one that rings when the door opens. I turned, heart in my throat. The door was still shut, but now there were wet footprints leading from the door to one of the booths. I didn't hear the door open. I didn't see anyone come in, but those prints were fresh, and someone or something was sitting in booth 7. I couldn't see anyone there directly, just a shadow, like the shape of a man, dark and still. I backed away slowly. I didn't even think. I just ran to the back room, locked the door, and called 911 from my cell phone. The call connected. I told them someone had broken in. I didn't care how crazy it sounded. They said officers were on the way. I stayed in that room for nearly 20 minutes, sitting in the corner, holding that bat like my life depended on it. When the police finally arrived, I came out shaking, but booth 7 was empty. The windows were clean. No handprint. No footprints. The security monitor was off. The radio unplugged. The only proof, I had was the call record on my phone and my memory, but I know what I saw. After that night, I never worked another night shift. I quit the next day. A few weeks later, I heard through another employee that a customer had come in during the day asking about me. Tall man, wore a dark coat, didn't say much. When they told him I no longer worked there, he just smiled and said, "I'll come back later." I used to work as a security guard for an old office building in Ontario. It was a dull night shift job, perfect for people who didn't mind being alone. Most of the companies that rented space there shut down at 6 p.m., so from then on, the entire 8th-floor building was practically empty, except for me. Had a small office on the first floor with cameras covering the main hallways, stairwells, the parking lot, and the basement. My job was simple: walk around every 2 hours, make sure everything was locked up, and keep an eye on the monitors. Most nights were boring. Just me, a thermos of coffee, and YouTube videos playing quietly in the background. But one night, everything changed. It was a Thursday, late November. Snow had started to fall earlier that day, and by the time I got to work at 10 p.m., the streets were already slick and silent. My shift ran until 6 a.m., and I was used to spending it in total peace. That night started out like any other. I did my first patrol at midnight, walked the halls, checked doors, even waved at the janitor, Mr. Raj, who was still mopping the lobby floors. He always left by 12:30. I liked him, kind, quiet man. Never caused any trouble. When I got back to the office, I sat down to check the cameras. Everything looked normal. Except one thing. The basement door was open. Now, this basement door had always creeped me out. It led down to an old storage area that hadn't been used in years. It was dusty, full of broken furniture, and dead silent. We kept it locked, and only the building manager had the key. I checked it on every shift, and it was always shut. But now I was staring at the screen, watching the door swing slightly open. I paused, thinking maybe Mr. Raj had gone down there and forgotten to close it. But I had just seen him leave. Something didn't feel right. I grabbed my flashlight and the keys, and I made my way to the basement door. The hallway lights buzzed softly above me, and everything looked off, like the shadows were longer than usual, like the building was holding its breath. When I reached the door, I noticed something strange. It wasn't just unlocked. It looked like it had been forced open. The lock was slightly bent, and the door frame had splinters. I hesitated, shining my light down the stairs. They disappeared into darkness. The smell hit me next, musty, moldy, almost metallic, like old water or rusted metal. I took a breath and started down. The steps creaked under me. The deeper I went, the colder it got. The air felt thick, like I was walking into a cellar that hadn't been opened in years. When I reached the bottom, my light passed over old office chairs, filing cabinets, cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. They were slow, deliberate, and just around the corner. I froze. Hello? I called out. My voice cracked slightly. Security. Who's down here? No answer. I turned the corner, shining my light. No one. Just more junk. Then, from behind me, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A whisper, clear, right by my ear. It said, "Go back." I spun around, heart pounding, shining the flashlight wildly. Nobody. I backed away, trying to stay calm. I turned to head up the stairs, and that's when I saw the door. Another door, one I had never seen before. It was built into the concrete wall at the far end of the basement. Heavy metal, rusted handle, no label, no lock. I should have left it alone. I should have walked right back up those stairs, but I couldn't. Something about it drew me in. Walked over and slowly pushed it open. Inside was a small room, bare concrete, no lights, just darkness. My flashlight barely lit the inside. I stepped in just 1 foot over the threshold. Then I heard it again, the whisper. But this time, it was everywhere. It wasn't just near my ear, it surrounded me. Dozens of voices, overlapping, whispering the same thing. Don't look. I stumbled back. My light flickered and then shut off. I panicked. Fumbled with my phone, turned on the flashlight and caught a glimpse of something in the corner. A figure. Not moving. Just watching. I didn't stay to see what it was. I ran. I sprinted up those basement stairs like hell was chasing me. When I reached the top, I slammed the door shut and locked it, heart thudding in my ears. Ran back to the office and stared at the monitor. The basement camera feed was just static. I couldn't breathe. I called the building manager, woke him up and told him someone broke into the basement. He said that was impossible, that he had the only key. I didn't tell him about the voices, or the figure, or the door. He came in the next morning to inspect. Here's the thing. The metal door in the basement? Gone. I went down with him. Showed him the exact wall. It was just solid concrete. No door. No room. Nothing. He looked at me like I was crazy. But I know what I saw. I quit that same week. I told myself I'd forget about it, that maybe I was overtired. Maybe it was stress or an illusion. But 2 months later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Blurry image of that same basement room. Concrete walls. And in the corner, barely visible, was that figure. Still. Standing there. Still watching. On the back of the photo, in small red ink, were 3 words. You looked inside. I never responded. I moved cities, changed my number, told no one. But some nights when the wind howls and my house creaks, I swear I can hear those whispers again, telling me what they told me that night. Don't look. I used to work night shifts at a small convenience store in the middle of nowhere, literally. The store was along a lonely highway in upstate New York. We were the only place open for miles. It was quiet most nights. Boring, really. Just me. A coffee machine, and the occasional trucker stopping by for gas or snacks. This story happened about 4 years ago during the fall. The nights were getting colder and darker, and I remember the trees outside looking like black skeletons under the streetlight. I'd been working the job for almost a year and thought I'd seen everything: drunk guys, weird customers, even a guy who tried to pay me in Canadian quarters and thought I wouldn't notice. But what happened this one night was something I still can't explain. And believe me, I've tried. It was around 2:30 a.m. I was alone in the store, sitting behind the counter, drinking coffee and scrolling through my phone. No customers in sight. That late, most of the people who came in were truckers or random travelers trying to stay awake. But that night, it was unusually quiet. Almost. Too quiet. The store had these big glass windows up front, so you could see the gas pumps and the parking lot outside. We had a couple of dim yellow lights above the pumps, but beyond that, it was pitch black. No towns nearby, no streetlights. Just woods and road. That's when I noticed something strange on the security monitor. We had 4 cameras, 1 for the parking lot, 1 inside the store, 1 at the back exit, and 1 by the freezer. On the monitor, I saw what looked like someone standing near pump 3. I squinted and leaned forward. The person wasn't moving, just standing there. I looked up through the window to see them in real life. But when I looked, there was no one there. I stared for a few seconds, thinking maybe I imagined it. Then I looked back at the screen. They were still there. My first thought was, the camera must be glitching. I had seen weird bugs before, blurry images, flickers, that sort of thing. But this figure looked real, not a glitch. It looked like a person wearing dark clothes with something covering their face. I started feeling uneasy. I pressed the SIN intercom button that plays a recorded message outside, the one that says, "Welcome to Pine Mart Gas, please come inside to pay." I hit the button, hoping maybe whoever it was would move or respond. Nothing. The figure didn't even flinch. I grabbed the flashlight we kept under the counter, stepped outside, and walked slowly toward pump 3. But when I got there, no one. No sound, no sign of anyone. Just cold air and the hum of the lights above. I looked around the parking lot. Empty. I turned back toward the store, and I swear to God I saw someone watching me from inside. Someone was standing just behind the counter, right where I had been sitting. My heart dropped. I rushed back in, but the store was empty. I searched every aisle. I checked the back exit. Nothing. It didn't make sense. I was outside for less than 30 seconds. I started feeling like I was losing my mind. I even replayed the last few seconds on the camera system. Nothing strange showed up, just me walking out and walking back in. No sign of the figure at the pump. No one behind the counter. That's when things started getting weirder. About 20 minutes later, I heard a loud bang from the back of the store, like something hit the metal door hard. I jumped, heart pounding, and grabbed the flashlight again. I slowly walked to the back. The door was shut and locked, just like always. I stood there for a moment, listening. And then I heard it again. A knock. 3 slow, loud knocks. Bang. 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 I didn't open the door. I called out, "We're closed and the back front entrance is open." No answer. Just silence. I went back to the counter, trying to shake it off. Maybe it was wind. Or a raccoon. I told myself anything to stay calm. Around 3:15 a.m., I got a call on the store phone. No caller ID. I picked it up and said, "Pine Mart Gas, how can I help you?" No one answered. Just breathing. I said, "Hello?" Again. The breathing got louder. Then dash click. They hung up. I put the phone down, and that's when the power went out. Everything. The lights, the camera feed, the fridge hum. Gone. I sat in total darkness. The only light came from my phone screen. I turned on the flashlight app and stood up slowly. The store felt different, heavier, like something was watching me. I walked around the front of the counter and froze. The freezer door in the back was wide open. We always kept it closed. Always. I didn't even hear it open. I walked slowly toward it. Every step felt like I was walking deeper into something I shouldn't. When I reached the freezer, I shone my light inside. Empty. But on the back wall of the freezer were 3 handprints. Big, dark smudges. Too big to be mine, and they were fresh. I could see the moisture. I ran. I didn't care about the rules. I grabbed my jacket and car keys and ran out of the store. I drove off without clocking out, speeding down the highway toward the nearest town. I told my boss the power went out and I didn't feel safe. I didn't mention the figure, the call, or the handprints. I didn't want him thinking I was crazy. Few days later, I quit. I still don't know what I saw that night. Maybe it was some twisted prank. Maybe it was something worse. I'll never know. But here's the thing that still chills me. The next day, my boss called me. He said the morning worker found the back door unlocked when he arrived in the freezer. It was completely empty. All the food gone. And the only thing they found in there? A single note written on the wall in black marker. "You saw me." I didn't respond. I blocked the number. I never went back. Now, every time I drive past that stretch of highway, I keep my eyes on the road. I don't stop. I don't look. And if I ever get another night shift job, it won't be in the middle of nowhere.